Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's council meeting for Monday, the 25th of June 2018. Could we all stand for the opening prayer? Thanks. Lord, we ask that you guide us in our decision-making, protect us in the community we serve from all that is evil, and strengthen our unity for the welfare of the city. Amen. I would like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people as the traditional custodians of the land that we meet upon today, and pay my respects to the elders, both past, present and future, for they hold the memories, culture, tradition and hopes of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that contribute to our community. Thank you. CM2, recording and webcasting the meeting. This council meeting is being webcast and recorded. By speaking at the council meeting, you agree to being recorded and webcast. Please ensure that if and when you are speaking at this council meeting that you are respectful to other people and use appropriate language. AlburyCity accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this council meeting. An audio recording will be made for administrative purposes. Conflict of interest declaration received by the Chair and disclosures of political donations. I have a number of conflict of interest declarations. First one is from Councillor Doxey. It's a non-pecuniary, less than significance. Brief description is my wife has attended several public meetings of the Action Group, Ordinary Council meeting CM 13.4, DA 10.2017.358, 51.1, Star Hotel. The meeting date is tonight's date, and the action will be remain in the chamber and participate. Mr. Frank Zaknich, pecuniary. Brief description, resident and owner of property in Guinea Street, Albury, close to the Star Hotel. CM 13.4, DA 502 Guinea Street, Star Hotel. Action will be to leave the chamber when matter is discussed. Councillor Mary King, conflict is non-pecuniary, significant. I own a property in the vicinity of the hotel. I've been lobbied, emailed and spoken to by opponents, and I feel I cannot be objective. Star Hotel application, today's date, and action is leave the chamber. Mr. Michael Keys, pecuniary. Council meeting 13.1, external report review of organisational structure, action leave the chamber. Mr. Michael Keys, pecuniary. Council CM 17, review of organisation structure, action is to leave the chamber. CM 17. Mr. James Jenkins, nature of conflict is pecuniary. The review of organisational structure report has implications for the director's role. CM 13.1, external report, review of organisational structure. Action is leave the council chamber. Mr. James Jenkins, pecuniary. The review of organisational structure report has implications for the director's role. CM 17.1, confidential matter, review of organisational structure. Action is to leave the council chamber. Mr. Brad Ferris, pecuniary, director at AlburyCity. CM 17.1, review of organisation structure. Action is to leave the chamber. Mr. Brad Ferris, nature of conflict is pecuniary. Director at AlburyCity is the reasons. Agenda item is 13.1, external report, review of organisation structure. Action is to leave the chamber. Mr. Justin Finlayson, nature of conflict is pecuniary. My position of AlburyCity Chief Financial Officer may be impacted by the organisation structure review. CM 13.1 and CM 17.1, review of organisation structure. Action is to leave the council chamber whilst the agenda items are being considered by council. Thank you. Mr. Zaknich.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This advice relates to disclosure of political donations and requirements under the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979. The Act under Section 147 requires a person submitting planning applications or submissions regarding a planning application to disclose any reportable political donation and or gifts to any local councillor or employee of the council. Reportable political donations include those of or above $1,000. The disclosure statement forms are available on the Council's website or from the Customer Service Centre and must be lodged in accordance with the Act. The forms are also available at the back of the chamber during meetings. In dealing with development applications, councillors need to take into account specific matters contained in the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. Accordingly, the provisions of Section 79C1 of that Act are set out in the Council Officer's report detailing issues to be considered. The Local Government Act 1993, Section 375A, requires that a division be called whenever a motion for a planning decision is put at a meeting of the Council. Planning decision means a decision made in the exercise of a function of Council under the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, including a decision relating to a development application, an environmental planning instrument, a development control plan or a development contributions plan under that Act, but not including the making of an order under Division 2A of Part 6 of that Act. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Zaknich. Apologies. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Doxey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move the recommendation that Council receive, note, accept the apology of Councillor Cameron and grant leave of absence for the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
Second that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Merrill Minute. There is no Merrill Minute. CM6 action plans, CM 6.1, CM 6.2, 6.3 and 6.4. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that the following action plans be received and noted. 6.3 actions in progress and 6.4 long-term issues. Are there others?
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
Second that, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to that at all?
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Happy to put that. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. CM7, confirmation minutes of the previous meeting held on Monday the 12th of June 2018. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Vanderman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that the minutes of the council meeting held on Monday 12 June 2018 at 6 p.m. be confirmed.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
Second that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman, do you wish to speak to that?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. There being no question or debate, happy to put that. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM8, reports from community forums. There are none. CM9, notices of motion or notice of rescission. CM9.1, notice of motion community sponsorship program. Councillor Conn.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that Council, 1, note that Albury is a community which welcomes refugees, 2, supports an expanded and improved community sponsorship program, and 3, calls on the federal government to improve and expand the community sponsorship program to ensure that the program A, does not take places from others in need, B, provides adequate support and services, C, limit the cost on sponsors, D, allows community, family and businesses to act as sponsors, and E, creates more places for people in need of protection to settle in Australia.
Thank you, Councillor Conn. Councillor Stutchbury.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to second that.
Thank you, Councillor Stutchbury. Councillor Conn, just open debate.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Firstly, just to acknowledge that this is a largely symbolic motion. It doesn't require council funding or resourcing, but I believe it's important for council to have a stance on this issue to show to our community and to the federal government. I've moved this motion because Albury was declared a refugee welcome zone in 2015, and we're home to thriving Bhutanese and Congolese communities, in part thanks to the wonderful work of volunteer groups like the Murray Valley Refugee Sanctuary Group, the Albury-Wodonga Ethnic Communities Council and the Volunteer Resource Bureau. The community sponsorship program was piloted by the Australian government over the last few years. It allows community groups or businesses to sponsor refugees to come to their particular community. This pilot program was largely successful but has significant room for improvement, and those points A to E that I've moved as part of point 3 are the suggestions of Amnesty International. It's important that if our local community groups put significant time and energy to raise the tens of thousands of dollars required to support a refugee to come to Albury-Wodonga, that's not taking a place from someone else languishing in a refugee camp. The community sponsorship program would not only benefit refugees, but our communities by allowing community groups and families and businesses in our region to choose to support refugees and to have a voice and some ownership over that process. So I think this program has enormous benefit for regional communities, and it's important to show our community and the federal government that AlburyCity supports it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Con. There are no speakers against. Happy to take a speaker for. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to reinforce those comments made by Councillor Con. I've had the pleasure in the last 7.5, 8 years of assisting Bhutanese communities and Bhutanese refugees, people who came here with a duffel bag each. And last year I was happy to help them sign the loan agreements to have a house built. And they're not the first ones. So in 7 years, saved the money, worked hard, buy houses. They contribute economically to our community, they contribute culturally to our community, and we should be grateful for the input they have into all aspects of the community. And a great recognition of that, of course, are the photographs and the other things you will see in the Library Museum right now celebrating particularly the Bhutanese community. So I support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. There being no further speakers for or against, I'd just like to say that I too support this motion. I think Albury and Wodonga do a great job welcoming our migrant and refugee communities. We're a multicultural community, we're a multicultural country. And whilst, in essence, this is a motion that basically supports our refugee welcome zone and doesn't really go much further than that, I think we need to put a lot of pressure on our government to continue to support our community across the board, including our refugee communities. So I do support this motion wholeheartedly. Councillor Con, do you wish to close debate?
No, thanks, Mr Mayor. I thank the councillors for their support.
Thank you. I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM10, notices of presentation and deputations. There are none. CM11, reports of minutes of committees and working parties. Sports Albury Advisory Committee meeting, minutes held on Wednesday the 16th of May 2018. Councillor Vanderven.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'll move that the minutes and recommendations of the Sports Albury Advisory Committee meeting held on Wednesday 16 May 2018 at 7 p.m. be received, noted and accepted.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderven, do you wish to speak to that at all?
Only to say that we're in the process of trying to revise some of the code of practice, if you like, around the representation of the... Excuse me, Mr Mayor, I am on call. My apologies. Yeah, just to say that we're revising the membership of the committee or the processes around that, and I acknowledge the contribution that the current members of the Sports Albury Committee have made and continue to make over a long period of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderven. There being no further speakers for or questions, I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. CM 11.2, minutes of the Local Traffic Safety Committee meeting held on Thursday the 31st of May 2018. Councillor Doxey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move the recommendation that the minutes and recommendations of the Local Traffic Committee meeting held on Thursday 31 May 2018 at 10:05 be received, noted and accepted. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken.
Happy to second that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey, do you wish to speak to that?
Very briefly, Mr Mayor, thank you. I'd like to continue to thank the members of the committee for their contributions throughout the my term, the last 5.5 years as chair, and also to RMS and the local police. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Doxey. There being no further question or debate, happy to put that. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. CM 11.3, minutes of the Albury Airport Users Advisory Committee meeting held on Wednesday the 6th of June 2018. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you to move the recommendation that the minutes and recommendations of the Albury Airport Users Advisory Committee held on Wednesday, the 6th of June 2018 at 10:01am be received, noted and accepted.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gluckin, did you wish to speak to that at all?
Thank you.
Thank you. Being no further question or debate, happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. 11.4, the minutes of the Les O'Brien Athletics Precinct Advisory Committee meeting held on Wednesday the 6th of June 2018. Councillor Gluckin.
Sorry, I'm not actually. I was hoping to second that.
Oh, okay. I'll get someone else. Councillor Thurley, you wish to move that?
I'll move that the minutes and recommendations of the Les O'Brien Athletics Precinct Advisory Committee held on Wednesday, 6 June 2018 at 5:30 be received, noted and accepted.
Thank you. Councillor Gluckin.
Thank you. I was happy to second the chair for that.
Thank you. Councillor Hurd, do you wish to speak to that at all?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. On that note, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. CM12, the documents for sealing. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Gluckin.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. Recommendation that Council authorises its seal to be affixed to the documents outlined below in the presence of two signatories authorised to affix the seal pursuant to Regulation 400 of the Local Government General Regulation 2005 and the use of the Council seal policy. A, AlburyCity lease to Bivalo, Proprietary Limited, Jane Sloan Lawyers, Suite number 1, 3rd floor, 553 Keywell Street, Albury, being a 3-year term lease. Commencing 1 July 2018, file number 09/01800, and the second item B, deed of variation Albury City and LMS Energy, variation to allow the solar array to be constructed at the Albury Waste Management Centre, 565 Mudge Street, Lavington, New South Wales 2641, file number 17/00011. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gluckin. A seconder, Councillor Vanderman.
Yes. Yep.
Happy to second?
Happy to second them,
Thank
Mr. Mayor.
you. Councillor Gluckin, wish to speak to that at all?
No, thank you.
Thank you. No further question or debate. Happy to put that. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you. CM13, Officers' Report for consideration. CM13.1, let the records reflect that the directors are leaving the building. Oh, not the building, the chamber. CM 13.1 External Report, Review of Organisation Structure. Councillor Vanderman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that Council A receive and note the report on the organisation structure, macro level, external review and attached recommendations. B, adopt the attached recommendations, action plan and implementation timetable. And C, consider the further confidential report on organisation structure, macro level, change options, timing and impacts at this meeting.
Thank you. Seconder, thanks, councillors. Councillor Thurley.
I'll second the motion, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Vanderman, do you wish to speak to that?
Briefly, Mr. Mayor, look, we're coming to the pointy end of a process that was probably started 12 months ago. We are required on a regular basis to review our organisational structure with the General Manager, and these recommendations are out of the latest of those external consultants' reports that we engaged to provide some assistance in this process. So we've had significant input into the process with one-on-one meetings with the consultant, and also had quite a few discussions at workshops regarding the outcomes for this. And I believe that the outcomes that we're going to achieve will mean a better, smarter and leaner council to service the community of Albury. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderman. There being no further question or debate, I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Can we get someone to see if our directors can return? Thanks. Thanks, Paul. Thank you, directors. The directors have returned. CM 13.2, results of the draft youth strategy public exhibition. Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that Council A acknowledges the community feedback received in response to the public exhibition of the Draft Youth Services Strategy 2018 to 2021, and B adopts the revised Draft Youth Services Strategy 2018 to 2021.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
Second that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Con, you wish to open debate?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to speak to this item to thank the members of the Youth Council and the Retro Youth Management Committee for the valuable feedback that they've provided. I met those incredible young people earlier this year, and when I welcomed them to Council, I promised that if they made submissions to policies or strategies of Council, that their voices would be heard in this chamber and that their submissions would be acknowledged. So I just wanted to read out some of the suggestions that were made by those young people that have been incorporated by our staff so that amendments have actually been made to the strategy. So there is huge value in having these young people involved in Youth Council. They made fantastic suggestions like acknowledging the importance of having events across the city, including Lavington and Thurgoona, not just in the Albury CBD, having a sexual health forum through the Youth Cafe, clarifying that the Disability Disco is an annual opportunity for young people to volunteer in Albury. They wanted the addition of traineeships as potential opportunities for employment of young people by Council, and to investigate a driver education program through the Youth Cafe, and also to have workshops hosted on how to access affordable accommodation. These are obviously young people who are really clued in with the big issues affecting their demographic in Albury, and I was really pleased to see the quality of their recommendations, and I commend the revised strategy to fellow councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Con. There being no further questions, I'm happy to ask a question probably to Mr Jenkins in relation to this particular item. There was an extensive survey conducted on a variety of issues, and I see youth employment was one of those major issues. Who conducted the survey, and under what? Was it done under advice from a consultant, or was it done by a youth council?
The survey was conducted by our staff, but that was informed by a forum that was held with young people, where they identified employment as one of the issues, and the survey followed from that forum. So the survey was run past the Youth Council to make sure they thought it was appropriate, and then sent out to over 400 young people.
Very good. Great survey. Okay. Councillor Con, there being no further question or debate, do you wish to close debate?
No, thank you.
Okay, I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM 13.3, the election of the Board of Albury Shires Association, New South Wales. Councillor Vandervan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll move the recommendation as a motion that Council A nominate the Mayor, Deputy Mayor and 2 other councillors to be determined at this meeting as voting delegates to vote in the election to fill a casual vacancy in the office of Vice President, Rural Regional Councils and the Local Government and Shires Association Board, and B, that names and postal address of the voting delegates are forwarded to the Association by 12 noon, 6 July 2018.
Thank you, Councillor Vandervan. Councillor Glacken.
Happy to second that.
Thank you. Councillor Vandervan, do you wish to speak to that at all?
Very, very briefly, Mr Mayor, only to say that this is just a procedural issue for us from the point of view that somebody resigned that we'd voted for previously, so we get the chance to vote for the replacement. Just to make a comment that the replacement should probably come from those people that voted in the first place rather than anyone else.
Thank you, Councillor Vandervan.
Thank you.
Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried, and we now have to nominate some people to vote. Councillor Vandervan.
Well, I'll nominate the Mayor and Deputy Mayor, which is obviously already there, and 2 other councillors who were both at the last conference, which is Councillors Cameron and Glacken. Were they at the voting delegate? Sorry, Councillors King and Glacken. And Cameron, sorry, my apologies.
Councillor King, are you happy to accept that nomination?
Happy to accept.
Was that yes?
Happy, yeah.
You've got a bit of a problem with your mic there. Thank you. And Councillor Cameron's absent, but I'm sure he'd accept the nomination. So is anyone else wishing to nominate? No? Well, maybe declare that they are the...
Sorry, Mr Mayor, probably need to procedurally go through a seconder and those issues.
So...
I move the motion that they be appointed.
Councillor Stutchbury?
Happy to second that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Vanderman, just to say any more in relation to the nomination?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Happy to put them. All those in favour? Anyone against? Nominations are carried. Thank you. CM 13.4, Development Application 10.2017.35851.1, 502 Guinea Street, Albury, alteration additions to hotel, the Star Hotel. Let the minutes reflect that Mr Zachnitz is leaving the meeting, as well as Councillor King. Okay.
What do I? Yeah.
Thank you, councillors. Councillor Vanderman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll move the recommendation of Council A, receive and note the contents of this report, and B, that development application 10.2018.35851.1 for additions and alterations to the existing hotel with use of the first floor as an ancillary function centre at Lot 1 DP 834096, number 502 Guinea Street, Albury, be approved subject to conditions contained in the draft determination included at attachment 7 to this report.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderman. Need a seconder for that one, thanks. No seconder. I'm happy to second that motion, Councillor Vanderman. Did you wish to open debate on the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, there's been this process or this development application has been on our books now for quite some time. We've had community forums, we've had feedback, we've had hundreds of submissions around this, and I think the final outcome of the report and the recommendation from the council staff, keeping in mind that the only way that we are able to make any determination on this is regarding the planning issues rather than any other issues. I think that the issues raised by submitters around noise, traffic, and just the amenity have been dealt with by the provision of the conditions of the consent. Now, I noticed that the only forum I wasn't able to attend was the meeting that was held about last week, I think, or maybe a fortnight ago, because I just couldn't attend. But I attended the community forum. I've looked at all of the emails, read all the emails, read the conversations between council staff and our councillors with regard to questions around this particular development, what we can and can't do. And I believe that everything has been done to accommodate the submitters' concerns with regard to this development. I see this development as an attempt by the proprietor of the Star Hotel to maximise the use of that facility during the hours in which he's allowed to operate. Now, even that was knocked back to a certain extent by the restriction of the hours of the extra facility. So it's no different to any other business that's trying to maximise the if you like, the return on investment of assets or anything else. So from my perspective, it is worthy of support from the point of view that all of the issues around the submitters' objections have been dealt with. I might note that the hotel has been part of the, if you like, the streetscape and the fabric of that area for a long, long time. I don't exactly know when the Star Hotel was first put in place, and it probably wasn't a residential area at that stage, but noting that all of the houses have gone around that, and they seem to have, I suppose, grown up together over a long period of time. And I do understand the concerns of some of the residents, but as again I said, I believe that the conditions of consent have fully, or to a majority of extent, satisfied, in my mind anyway, the issues that the objectors have raised. That's pretty much it. I do have a question, Mr. Mayor, of the relevant staff, if I can get you to permit me to ask that question. Thank you. Through you to the relevant member of staff. One of the latest submissions that we did get was from a resident 2 doors from the hotel around not so much noise issues from the proposed development, but noise issues over the last 10 years or so. Are you able to tell me, and obviously anyone else in this room, whether there have been received by council any complaints about noise at the Star Hotel, and if so, what's been done about those issues?
Mr. Keys.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd have to take that question on notice to give the exact response. I believe there have been occasions where complaints have been made. I do also note that there's restrictions on the liquor licence as a result of complaints being made to the licensing board in regards to amplified music and the use of that in external areas related to the establishment.
Councillor Annie, come forward.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether taking a question on notice is going to suit the purposes for tonight, but I do have concerns. I want to make sure that any noise issues that arise out of this particular business, whether it's as an existing business or as the developed business would look like, that we have the proper processes in place to monitor and make compliance an object for our council staff and any other body that might have input into that, whether it be the police or anyone else, liquor and gaming, etc.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderman. Speaker against Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I should signal now that if this motion fails, I have an alternate motion that I'll put to council. I speak against this motion because I see a huge number of flaws in the whole process and in the final outcome. In my opinion, the original DA was vague and even disingenuous. We were told things like the proposal is not to extend. It's extended, not enlarged, expanded or intensified. Well, my Rogers thesaurus says that extended and enlarged are much the same word. We had a community forum at which residents came and put their concerns. The proponent chose not to, and that's his right, of course. But in choosing not to, he said, we choose not to attend but reserve our right to make further submissions depending on what allegations are made by objectors, including any personal or defamatory remarks. So when the proponent puts a submission to council, it's called a submission or a DA. When residents put a submission, it's called an allegation or a personal or defamatory remark. This doesn't seem well for an organisation that will have to operate in this community and cooperate and get on with the residents. I was reminded of another application in 2015, Fairway Gardens. I believe it was the same proponent or planner, sorry. And on that occasion, he said to us as councillors, that if we acceptance of such advocacy without challenge or rebuke is unfortunate. He labelled their submissions an attempt to deliberately delay and frustrate the application. He hoped that councillors would rise above the innuendo. This is not good planning, and it is not good representation of the client. This is confrontational and is not the way to go about getting approval for a development which is in a residential area. The residents have tolerated this and generally got on well. And they have said on numerous occasions in the submissions that I have read that we chose to live there and we knew the hotel was there and we have tolerated to a great extent what has occurred. On this occasion, I said this application was vague and disingenuous. We were first told that the seminar rooms would operate typically in business hours, 8:30 till 5 p.m. But later we hear it won't be just conferences, there'll be weddings, parties. They will occur until midnight with people out on balconies and verandas until midnight. We are told at some stage that food and drink may be served on these balconies. They were only breakout areas, but I'm not sure what that means. We're told that alcohol will be unlikely to be consumed at corporate functions. Well, I don't know which corporate functions the planner has been to, but most of the ones that I've been to, they consume alcohol. And why else would you have it at a pub if you're not going to consume alcohol? We're told we should rely on corporate decorum for good behaviour. I can name a number of people in very high positions who have not exhibited corporate decorum, and there are one or two of them possibly facing criminal charges. We're told the breakout areas won't have any tables, but then we're told we'll have discrete furniture units with table tops for placement of drink glasses and handbags. Interesting. This is just not working with the community to achieve a development that everyone can live with. And if this motion fails, I'll put up my new motion. If it gets up, I would want 2 conditions added to the development consent. One would be that the proponent is to fund a noise study of the existing site, including identifying the background noise levels at this location and nominated residential premises. The study to be undertaken by a suitably qualified noise consultant after submission to and approval by Albury City Council. And 2, that the proponent meet with Albury City Police and resolve issues to the satisfaction of the local area command as soon as possible, but prior to the end of July. We have received a late submission today from the New South Wales Police, and it raises serious matters that need to be addressed. And I believe the proponent needs to sit down with the police face to face and work out an agreed solution to some of the problems they have identified. So I will vote against the motion, and if this motion fails, I'll put up an alternative.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Question, Councillor Vanderman.
Thank you. I'm just not sure how we're going to deal with the issues that Councillor Thurley's raised. Would he propose an amendment to the current motion on the lines of the 2 things that he would like added to the conditions of consent, which I'm happy to accept, by the way, so that we could deal with those 2 should this motion get up, because there's probably no other way of doing that. So procedurally, do we need Councillor Thurley to move amendments to this motion on the basis of that they can be dealt with if this gets up?
Yes, good question. I was going to ask Councillor Thurley, who was foreshadowing that motion, but I think given you're the mover and I'm the second, I'm happy to accept that as an inclusion into the current motion so we can debate that motion with those conditions in the DCP. If you wish, Councillor Thurley, did you wish to pass that on to the typist? Thanks. Thank you, Councillor Landon. Thank you. Councillor Vander, are you comfortable with that?
Probably still need the original motion in full as items A and B, and then perhaps just to say, so the B, A and B is still the same, and then basically the additions are, an item C, additional conditions of consent. That's the way I would have thought.
So the dot points become C.
Yeah, the 2 dot points become C,
Yeah.
1 and 2.
Yeah. Okay.
You're happy with that? Go up. That's because there's no other way of dealing with
No,
three
you're
of
right.
it. Yeah,
You're right.
it's fine.
Additional conditions. It's all right. Condition with the additional conditions of consent. Pretty neat to it.
Last one about the Albury police. You really need to clarify what you're after.
I'm asking you to sit with the police and meet with them.
There's a condition of consent. How do you satisfy?
Resolve the issues raised in the letter of.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just having some discussions around some feedback from Mr. Keys as far as the conditions of consent for item C2 is concerned, whether it's possible to have that as a condition of consent. Would you
Raise it, the date of that letter from the Albury police?
13th of June.
13th of June.
Councillor Con.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I have a question through to Mr. Keys, please, and it's regarding the second part of Part C. And I suppose my question is, what happens if those issues can't be resolved to their satisfaction? I think it's quite complicated to say we want the issues to be resolved and also approve the DA in the same breath. Can you please clarify what would happen if we move this version?
Mr. Keys.
Mr. Mayor, that was the question I was asking councillors on the side. To try and include that. There's uncertainty, but if I could just add to clarify one element of it, those issues that have been raised would be addressed through the plan of management, which is part of the draft conditions of consent, and that plan of management or management plan for the premises would be done in consultation with the New South Wales Police to make sure they're a party to it, because they would be expected to have some level of enforcement and authority over it once it's adopted. And we've done that previously with another establishment. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
happy to remove that dot point C2, Mr. Mayor.
Revert to the original motion.
No.
Leave the first dot
The
point.
first item is fine, but not
A and
C2.
B.
Not the second dot point.
Oh, okay. The
Yeah,
proponent
just-
meet, yeah.
Yep.
Well, they should probably have 1 and 2 next to them.
So it becomes an additional condition of consent, not conditions of consent. Thank you.
Councillor Con, question.
Not a question, just to clarify the wording of the dot point that's there at the moment. That's a sentence that doesn't make any sense. The proponent is to fund a noise study of the existing site, including identifying the background noise at the location, and nominate a residential premises study is to be undertaken.
Nominated. So we've got existing with an S and nominated.
Residential premises, full stop. The study is to be undertaken.
Thank you.
We don't, existing. We don't want exiting. Okay. We're comfortable with that now, Councillor Vanderman.
Yep, thank you.
Full stop after premises. and
Full stop after
the study.
premises. Are there any school teachers in the audience? Are we happy now?
Just change the full stop after premises, please.
And the study.
And this study is to be undertaken.
The study.
Yep.
The, Becca, we could have the study is to be undertaken. Excellent.
By
You don't want that
by-
gap there, I tell you.
by taking out the A between by and suitable. Yeah.
By a suitable.
Okay, nominated a residential premises. That A needs to disappear between nominated and residential as well. Thank you for your forbearance during this, this wordsmithing process.
The digit 2 should be replaced by the word TO too.
The digit.
Yeah. Submission to and approval by.
Submission to and approval by.
That's it.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. You comfortable with that now?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Vanderven, is it Teacher Vanderven? Councillor Vanderven. I'm happy with that one too.
Thank you.
All that matters. Councillor Docks, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is to Councillor Thurley. If this motion, as we see it on the screen now, is unsuccessful, do you intend with your foreshadowed motion?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. A speaker against, Councillor Glacken.
Thank you, through you. I was not able to support the first motion, and I can't support this motion either. And I refer to a section that one of the councillors referred to earlier, must be Councillor Thurley, having spoken against, with reference to the unenclosed areas, and I read from the report, will not be furnished with tables and chairs to discourage extended stay by delegates. It is noted, however, that the deck and balconies may be fitted with shelves to hold drinks, handbags, ashtrays and the like, etc. And I have no doubt that those areas would be utilised by people from this establishment, and that those areas would, of course, produce noise because people in those areas would make noise. I live in the centre of town, and I live near another establishment that have conditions applied to them. They have to close outdoor areas by a certain time. They can't play amplified music. They continually have people in those outdoor areas after the times that they're meant to. They continually have rowdy patrons, and those patrons disturb me and my family and other people that live in the vicinity of where we live. And it is a very difficult and onerous process to continually raise noise complaints. And as in our case, we had lived there, our house had been there for many years prior to that establishment opening and redeveloping to enable those outdoor areas. I cannot support this development or redevelopment. I have no issue with the fact that the establishment has been there for a significant number of years. And Councillor Vanderven, you made reference to its opening. It was opened in 1874, as says in the report. Just happens to be on the same page I was on, so that was easy to find. The establishment has been there for many years, and the people who buy houses there, they know that it's there. They know what they're buying into. But if there is this development, if this is approved, then that establishment will change. It will not be the establishment it is now. It will be different. And all of those people in all of those houses in that vicinity will be subjected to an altered establishment that would not have been allowed to build there if it were today and it were starting as a new block and a new development, as opposed to a request to modify the existing premises. So I cannot support this motion, and I was not able to support the original motion, of course, either. And my major concerns are around noise and the inconvenience that that will make and be for the people within our community that live in a residential area. Thank you.
Councillor Blacken. Have a speaker against? No speakers for at this point. Councillor Con.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, I don't think it's appropriate to comment about the character of the applicant, and I'm also not going to argue about whether shelves count as tables. I'm only trying to decide whether the end result of this application is positive or negative on balance. And when I first saw the original application, there were really what I thought 3 issues with this development. One was noise, the second was the hours of operation, and the third one was the sensitive site across the road. Now, the noise issues between the original application and the revised application were largely addressed. I think that the addition of double airlock doors was helpful. And the second issue I had, the operating hours, would also address the noise issues. I believe that Councillor Thurley was incorrect with the hours. The revised proposal is that the outdoor areas only be open until 6 p.m. Sunday to Thursday and only until 9 p.m. On Friday, Saturday. That's correct. And I thought that that was a significant improvement and a significant step in the right direction from the applicant. So I've lost a little bit of sleep over this DA, and when it comes down to it, my overwhelming concern for the site across the road is the reason that I'm voting against this. I understand that some conditions might be able to be imposed to prevent direct overlooking of the back garden, but at the end of the day, I think with the types of people that access that facility and the sensitivity of it, even the perception that they might be being watched by people from the pub across the road with or without direct sight lines is a serious problem. And I think that those women are my top priority. I understand that the proponents want to be able to use their first floor. I'd potentially consider a version of this in future that's completely enclosed indoor and doesn't have those outdoor areas that impact on the site across the road. So I will be voting against this.
Thank you, Councillor Con. There appears to be no more speakers for or against, so I'll probably have the last parting discussion about this particular issue, speaking for the motion on the board before us. As Councillor Glucken did indicate, this hotel has been in existence for 144 years, and it has gone through a number of different renovations over that period. I do not think it is genuine to raise the character of the planner or the issues concerning who has managed this application, because I think that is incredibly disingenuous. The application on merit is not a lot different to the application that was approved and has since been constructed at Brady's Hotel. Macaulay Street is also a residential area, and is also the value add to that amenity has been enormous when they finished the renovation of that hotel, and is in keeping with a strategy to relocate the awnings on buildings, old and new, around Albury. I also believe that the council staff have gone through this particular application with a fine-tooth comb and have provided us with an extensive report in collaboration with the proponent, who has worked rather diligently to address the issues raised by our staff. Yes, there are issues concerning noise, which have been addressed. There are issues concerning traffic that have been addressed. I believe that the staff have done their job, and I believe in this instance, this report does support the recommendation. I do not believe that we here tonight cannot approve this recommendation on the basis that it is a sound application and has great economic benefit for our community, and certainly provides another alternative for the owner of the hotel or the property to become more economically viable. I think in this chamber we have a lot of DAs coming before us about people wanting to open home businesses and people that want to open businesses, and if we're to stand in the way of progress, and certainly on the balance of what has been provided to us in this application, not approve the application, then basically we become part of the problem. So I will be supporting the motion as printed on the board. Councillor Glucken, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you to the most relevant member of staff. Can I confirm, please, the the status of the land, the zoning of the land where Brady's Hotel is, please.
Mr Keys.
Mr Mayor, I'd certainly have to take that on notice, but at a hazard of guess, it's a business zone. The exact one, mixed business, starts, I believe, south of Smollett Street, so it would be CBD, and that sort of use is permissible as opposed to the residential zone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Keys. Thank you, Councillor Gluckin. Councillor Vanderman, do you wish to close debate?
No, Mr Mayor, thank you. I think both the for and against have been adequately aired, so thank you.
Thank you. On that notion, we'll have a division on this matter, so if you can leave your hands raised, Councillor. Those for the motion? Mack and Vanderman. Those against the motion? Stutchbury, Doxey, Con, Gluckin and Thurley. The motion is lost. Councillor Thurley, you wish to push that on new motion?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I wonder, have you got the wording? Can you put that up, please? Mr Mayor, I move that Council refer the matter for further consideration and redesign by the applicant, including but not limited to the following items. 1. Management and use of the balcony and deck areas with particular reference to neighbourhood amenity, including A. Overlooking, B. Existing local noise levels and anticipated noise generation or incidents, C. Hours of use, D. Maximum number of people accessing these areas at any one time, and E. Patron management, or 1 to 6 as it appears on the board.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Looking for a seconder on that motion, thanks. Councillor Gluckin.
Happy to second this, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, you wish to open debate?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and let me make it clear. I'm also in favour of the owner of this premises being able to use it. It was once a hotel where people lived upstairs, and those hotels, that was the common style of hotels built in the late 1800s and early 1900s, and that is no longer the case. So the premises at the moment have completely unused space upstairs, and I'm all in favour of them finding a possible way to use these. What I'm not in favour of is disturbing the residential amenity which exists in this area. They have coexisted for many, many years, and I believe there is a way to carry out this development in sympathy with the local residents and the local community. And my comments about the planning matter so far were simply that this could have been achieved with better goodwill and better cooperation between planner and council and local residents. There is no need to get to confrontation. All of the submissions I have seen from residents have talked about living there and dealing with it and coping with it. At times they have problems. At times there is noise late at night. But I've not heard any one of them say this should not go ahead, this should be banned, this should be stopped completely. They want the development, they're happy to have it there, but they need controls. And I don't think we've got it quite right, and I hope that this motion will appeal to the proponent and his planner, and they will engage with the council and the community to deal with the issues that have highlighted here, and that will probably be to the satisfaction of the local community. So I commend this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. I have a speaker against. Councillor Con.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Firstly, to acknowledge the huge effort that was already made by the proponent to improve the application. I think many of the concerns raised by residents were addressed, particularly the opening hours and the noise complaints. Given the reasons I outlined in speaking against the previous motion, I also can't support this motion, having clarified with Michael Keys earlier this afternoon that a version of this DA that did not include the balcony and deck areas would not constitute an amendment but will require a new DA. So I think given that my primary concern is the perception of being overlooked at the sensitive site across the road at Guinea Street, I don't think that any kind of management plan for this balcony is going to solve that problem. And on those grounds, I think that the DA should be refused and that we should encourage a new version without the outdoor areas.
Thank you, Councillor Con. Question, Councillor Gleggen.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. With reference to this motion that the applicant be offered, in essence, an opportunity should this motion be carried, that the applicant would have an opportunity perhaps to redesign this redevelopment. Might that include either excluding the opportunity for patrons to utilise the front balcony, or indeed that a front balcony might be designed out of the redevelopment?
Mr. Keys.
Mr. Mayor, I think the wording that's provided there in the current recommendation or motion provides that opportunity, gives the proponent the opportunity to respond rather than giving directions that significantly amend or directly alter the proposal as submitted.
Thank you, Councillor Gleichen. There appears to be no more. Oh, we have a speaker for Councillor Stutchbury, the late one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This was always going to be a difficult DA to debate, and I'm quite jealous of Councillor Cameron having been absent from the chamber this evening. I think that the reason that this is a difficult one is because the pub's been there for 144 years, which is a fair bit longer than any of the local residents or indeed their houses. So one has sympathy for the publican or the proponent. Then again, the building's function is going to be somewhat altered by this DA, and therefore one can have sympathy for the local residents. So in fact, I don't find any aspect of this proposal easy to contemplate. And I do think that we should be supporting business where possible in this community, but we should also be looking after our citizens as well, if their complaints are reasonable. And I think some of the complaints about this DA are reasonable, not all, but some. And just in relation to Councillor Con's objections to this, I guess I would ask, why would someone put a sensitive site opposite a pub? But that's just an aside. I think that there is the opportunity to redesign and bring this back as something which both the local residents and the proponent and we can all agree with. So, yeah, I think that Councillor Thurley's motion is reasonable, and I'm prepared to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Stutchbury. There have been no further speakers for or against. Councillor Thurley, you've just closed debate.
I think most matters have been canvassed, Mr. Mayor, so I'm happy to leave it there.
Thank you. Happy to put the motion. Remember, we have a division. Council, those for the motion. Councillor Stutchbury, Councillor Doxey, Councillor Mack, Councillor Gleichen, Councillor Thurley and Councillor Vanderman. Those against? Councillor Con. The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM 14.1 investment balances May 2018. Councillor Vanderman.
Thank you,
Oh,
Mr.
yeah,
Mayor.
get them in. Stand
Happy.
by, Councillor Vanderman.
Yeah,
We're still
okay.
waiting for
All
the
right.
rest of the crowd to come back in. And everyone can leave if they like during this very short adjournment.
What, they're not interested in our investment balance?
Oh, well, they should be, I think. Don't you think, Councillor Vanderman? No, they're not. No, everyone's leaving. Okay, we'll go again, Councillor Vanderman.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'll move that Council receive and note the investment balances report for the month of May 2018.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley.
Second that motion, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderman. Did you have anything to say?
As I normally do, yes. Can I preface my remarks by asking a couple of questions with your permission through you to Mr Finlayson or the relevant member of staff?
Happy to take questions at
Two
the first
questions.
juncture. If you can ask the questions and then you can open debate.
Two questions, Mr Mayor. One is around the significant decrease in investments by non-fossil fuel type from a high of looks like about 43% in June last year to about 18% in May this year. And the second issue is I noticed that one major top-tier institution is not represented in our investment portfolio, yet they have a significant presence within AlburyCity as the new preferred supplier of banking services to council. I'm just wondering why that is the case.
Mr Finlayson.
Through you, Mr Mayor, thank you for the question. With respect to our investment balances with institutions that don't support the fossil fuel industry, the main reasons for the decrease are relating to the credit rating downgrade of a number of banks. I think back in May last year, which included the Bendigo Bank, which we had a significant proportion of our investment balances with. Since then, we've had to decrease the amount invested with the Bendigo Bank as term deposits have matured. That has been one reason. Another being that, for example, the Suncorp Bank has been less competitive, and therefore that's also limited the amount of funds that we can invest with those type of institutions. I do anticipate that with the review of our investment policy, which is to come back to council following the public exhibition process, that will enable staff to invest more within those categories with lower credit ratings that generally do not support the fossil fuel industry. With respect to the second question regarding the ANZ, the main reason being that the ANZ's term deposit rates are not competitive compared to that of other institutions.
Thank
Ask
you.
another question, or do you have to open debate?
No, just to note the answers to the questions, but making an observation that hopefully we can make some adjustments to our investments in fossil fuel or non-fossil fuel related investments, because if you look at the interest rates being returned by the other institutions that are that are green investments, the interest rates appear to be in the majority higher than those that don't provide the green investments. But noting that the bank balances on all of the accounts seem to be in good order. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderman. There appears to be no speakers for or against, so I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. We have no delegates' reports for noting, but I have one item of urgent business. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And my item of urgent business relates to funding of public libraries. It should be noted that, I should move the motion first, that Council A, through representations by the Mayor, support the actions of the New South Wales Public Libraries Association by sending a letter to the New South Wales Premier requesting 1, the rationale for their funding decision, 2, feedback on how New South Wales councils can continue to provide 2018 library service levels in an environment of increasing demand on a 20-year-old budget allocation, and 3, the New South Wales Government to reverse their funding decision and increase funding to public libraries. B, send copies of this letter to the Minister of the Arts, the Honourable Don Harwin, and local member Greg Applin, MLA.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Happy to allow the motion to be moved. Councillor Stutchbury.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, you wish to speak to it?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I am the council delegate on the New South Wales Public Library Association, and in this year, New South Wales Government, despite touting a budget surplus of some significant magnitude, reduced funding to public libraries by approximately 18%. And at the moment, New South Wales is the worst funder of public libraries overall. We allocate less than 7.8% of the total funds. Victoria is about 18%. I think Queensland is 12%. And this is the lowest level of funding since 1999-2000. So that's 20 years ago almost. And we expect councils to continue to fund public libraries and to continue to supply that service to the community. Once again, a cost being pushed onto local government. Infrastructure grants have been slashed, and while that's not a significant issue for Albury right now, I could tell you about libraries that have not had a dollar spent on infrastructure in 80 years, and this will cut them hard. The biggest problem that we have is that over $1.25 million have been slashed from annual subsidies, and that will affect our library significantly. And we have something like 350,000 visitors a year to our two libraries, and it's a critical service. We need them to be properly funded and not the government to take away the funding bit by bit and rely on AlburyCity making up that funding. And that's what will happen this year if this funding cut continues. And it's just not acceptable, and especially when New South Wales Government touted a fairly significant budget surplus and had money to splash on all sorts of things, but not on public libraries.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Given that they expect great levels of literacy, they're not going about it the right way, are they? Councillor Conn, you wish to speak for?
I do. Thank you, Councillor Thurley, for moving this. I strongly support it. I think our libraries are one of the only remaining places where you can go be indoors with other members of the community and not be expected to spend any money. And they're certainly a huge asset for disadvantaged members of the community. I even saw an article recently about another council, obviously interstate, who were looking at keeping libraries open quite late into the evening with activities on for older people, trying to discourage them from using the pokies, which I thought was quite innovative. We're struggling just to keep up our existing services with these budget cuts, let alone expand them to offer additional services to the community. So I strongly support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Conn. Speaker 4, Councillor Stutchbury.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I strongly support this motion. State government's got a budget surplus of $2.7 billion, which they splash out on all sorts of good stuff and then cut budgets to libraries. It's unfortunate. And I think we should be protesting in the strongest possible terms. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vander, wish to speak for?
Briefly, it's a $3.9 billion surplus that they touted. And the issue for me is around the fact that the majority of that the budget was spent on Sydney-centric issues, and it's, again, the regional areas that will bear more than the brunt of these cuts, because the libraries in a regional area are much more important than in a city area. They're important in the city areas, but there's a hell of a lot of other things to do. But in a regional area, it's going to have a bigger impact. So I fully support the motion, and we should be making representations in as strong a possible manner to the New South Wales Government. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Vandervan. And just to finish up on that one, when we were discussing it with Greater Hume on Friday, they were quite disappointed with these further budget cuts, and I think it's those smaller communities in the regions of New South Wales that will suffer considerably, given some of their libraries are their community meeting points, and certainly, as I said before, literacy is one of the issues that have sort of been high on the agenda for federal and state governments, yet they're not assisting that process by reducing funding and expecting local government to pick up the ball and run with it. So It's not okay, and I support Councillor Thurley's motion. Councillor Thurley, you should close debate.
Sufficient has been said, Mr Mayor, and I can only encourage that when you have your meeting and you write your letters, they are in the strongest possible terms.
Knowing how things go, I think it'll end up a motion for local government conference in October. But happy to put the motion as it is. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Councillor Thurley. CM 17.1, the review of organisation structure. I'll move into confidential. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Through you, with the recommendation that Council moves into confidential to discuss item CM 17.1, as this is a confidential item exclusive of press and public, or public on the grounds that the matters relate to personnel matters concerning particular individuals other than councillors, and the reference is Local Government Act 1993, number 30, section 10A2A. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glacken. Councillor Vanderman.
Happy to second that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. I'll ask if anyone Okay. Thank you, councillors, and thanks for the director returning. We are now in open council, and I just wish to confirm that the following motion was moved by Councillor Vandervan and seconded by Councillor Stutchbury. Is that correct? Councillor Doxey, sorry, and was carried that Council A, receive and note the report on the review of the organisation structure. B, adopt a revised two-directorate organisation structure as detailed in attachment 3. C, commence this revised organisation structure as of 1st July 2019. D, determine the positions of Deputy CEO as senior staff in accordance with section 332(1)A of the Local Government Act 1993. And E, authorise the General Manager to take all actions necessary to give effect to the revised organised structure as adopted. And this motion, as I reiterate, was carried by Council. And that concludes the business of Council this evening. Thank you, councillors.